I think maybe in a lot of ways, maybe the frustrations we run into or the problems we run into is the fact that there are some things that we cannot control.
Oh, The Office.
Mm.
Huh. Well, at first it was just awkward. So I had to work through my own awkwardness of like no one acknowledging our presence. And then I just tried harder to make them acknowledge our presence.
Mm-hmm. How did that go?
Well, after a few songs, I gave up on that. And then I was just playing to you and me.
Right.
I was just playing. Because, we're videoing and recording, so maybe we'll get a good video out of it. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe there's a good performance. I mean, sometimes those types of things, it's like when you just start concentrating on what you're doing rather than, the expected execution of a social contract.
Right, right, exactly.
When that's not going your way, it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll just, play to each other and then experiment a little bit and, try to, have fun.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, yeah. I think there was this extra pressure was just about the money part being on tour. And that's the part that really bothered me. What was that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a Tuesday night in Reno, so I can certainly accept our fate.
True.
But still, it's hard to get past that.
Yeah, I mean, while I'm performing, I don't think about the money.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, yeah, sure. That's like, all right, what is it?
Right.
The night before, could have been the best performance in the crowd. Definitely the best feeling while performing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was totally listening, maybe even enraptured, and and they were all quiet, and it was like appreciative, and it was great. I don't know, it was just a special, magical feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also being outside. I think this is the first outside show I've played in a long time that I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm outside.
Yeah, it's not 100 degrees.
We're not melting.
Plus.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think the difference between them raises the question. It's like, why am I doing here? Although, the first night, it's obvious why I'm doing here.
Uh-huh.
And then at the Office, it just really wasn't so obvious why. And you question yourself, you question everything, but you just go back to music sounded great, so
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, the rest of it's just gravy, right?
Right,
Yeah.
except for the money afterwards.
Yeah, no, that wasn't gravy.
That was just a little bit of flour.
Yeah, that was just some dried up flour that was at the bottom of the mixer.
It was. It was old flour.
That they couldn't scrub off when they were finished washing the bowls.
That's exactly right.
Ugh. After the Office show, when we were packing up, they had that mirror that was on the wall that you were perpendicular to.
Okay.
And
I don't remember it.
and well, I remember it very well because as I was coiling cables, I just looked up and I saw myself in the mirror. I was just thinking to myself, man. It wasn't even a why am I doing here. It was like, what am I doing here? Jeez. Like, just feeling, oh man, I just felt so miserable after that show. And just like defeated. And I mean, which is ridiculous because the 18 shows before it, actually 19 shows, because we've played 20 shows by that time. And the 19 shows before that were, for the most part, pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, only
Very few complaints.
yeah. I mean, Evangeline's was kind of loud, but there were people who were listening, and they acknowledged that indeed, if we died on stage, they would be able to resuscitate us. Maybe.
At least they would notice.
Right. They'd be like, oh man, I think those guys are dead. Rather than, well, you know, I'm a Sagittarius, and let me tell you about Sagittarii. Because that was the conversation they were having behind the bar.
Yeah.
Which kind of hurt.
Yes.
So,
if we only had a song about astrology.
I'll work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we ever go back there, we'll have to work
We're
on
never
that.
going back there.
And you won't have to work
We're
on that.
never going back there. Never. What a waste of time laying mines. You'll never get back home without a map. You double back, and every step is blown. I'll break down if you want me to, and I'll let go if you do, and I'll break down. And later on, when you were gone, and I still have my heart, the code word, remember her. We were kids kissing in the dark, and I'll break down if you want me to. I'll let go only if you do, and I'll break down if you want me to, and I'll let go. Now let go, and if you want me to, then I'll break down only if you do, and I'll let go when you want me to, and I'll break down.
Why do I think you're doing here? Because you write a lot of songs and you want people to hear your songs. And it's part of your livelihood. And maybe because you got a pedal steel guitar player that isn't half bad. And that can make it fun, because that's why I am doing here. It's fun to play that.
It's fun to play.
It's fun to hear that. Instead of going out and listening to other people, I can listen to myself, which isn't always great, but usually it's okay.
Yeah, I think why am I doing here is this whole to me, I always attach it. I've said it before in a previous episode. I attach it to age, opportunity. Why not? You know, at this point. But the thing about having all the songs is writing all the songs is because, you know, I translate that to art. That I'm making an artistic statement, and it's, you know, when we, at the house concert, and I talked about dementia, and I talked about making that song. You know, there's several people after the show who was, you know, said, yeah, we're all dealing with dementia in some way. Our parents are older, our friends are starting to show signs of that. And so there's this relevance, and there's this thing of like, you know, I always want to communicate to someone that, you know, these problems are not, you're not alone in your problems, you're not alone in your struggles or your emotions. Everybody has them. It feels pretty lonely when you're going through them.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but there's that thing of like, you know, somebody's recognized or somebody notices and says something. You know, it's almost the equivalent of like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you see somebody and like, oh, thanks for asking. You know, because they're going through their own personal emotional gulag. Why I think you are doing here is, I mean, certainly agrees with everything that you said. I would put a finer point on the playing part. Is the pedal steel is your voice.
Correct.
I mean, it is your instrument, but it is the voice from which you create these soundscapes and these you've been saying the word cinematic. There's a soundtrack thing, a cinematic soundtrack you hear in your head, and you're trying to
constantly
make that happen.
Right.
And you know, in order for that to happen, I don't want to be so bold as to say it, but there has to be a script, there has to be a vehicle, and those songs become the vehicles for the soundtrack that elevates the tension, or, you know, is the for lack of a better term, the crayons that will color and shade,
right,
you know, the story as it goes along. It opens up a whole other dimension to the songwriting. And that's one of the things that I value about why we're out on the road. But back to you, and I think that's a really important part of your identity. It's, you know, who you are is that pedal steel. And I think the struggles that we also have while we're out on the road, and we think about those things, we talked about this the other day, was having the humility or the modesty, and not, you know, because you're not a half bad pedal steel player, you're a 3/4 bad.
I'm half good. Right, exactly. Or just half good.
Right.
Is the pedal steel player half empty or half full?
Right.
Of
IPA, right? Yeah.
Right.
But I think that's the thing that is like, you're more than half good.
How'd that happen? Actually, I wasn't pushing on the lever quite hard enough.
What was the first breakthrough?
My first breakthrough with the pedal steel, where I felt like I was getting somewhere, was when it sounded somewhat in tune. Now, part of that is my first pedal steel was a Miller, which probably no one has ever heard of. They weren't made for very long, but they were notorious for not staying in tune. So, yeah, I had a rough vehicle to learn that instrument on. Once I got my show bud, it all started to fall into place a little quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first breakthrough. It was decades later, maybe 2 decades later, and I'm not really sure. But I started to feel almost one with it. It's like, and that's probably when it became my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that caught me off guard, but that was really a good feeling, because then it helped me to try new things and play better, and it just made it 100 times more fun.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, why am I doing here?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing here because I like to make music and transmit it to others and see the enjoyment they get out of it. And it's my livelihood, as little as it may be, but that's why I'm doing here. I love playing that instrument.